Let's try this again. All right, I'm going to try and get started here. I have streaming running, fortunately. Of course, it's got the wrong one. All right, so hopefully this is 436C. That's the class I thought I was teaching. So it's always a little chaotic at the beginning. Usually I get, the last couple of times I've taught, it's been like right at the beginning of the day or right at the end of the day. So there's like a big period. You can walk in, you can get all the stuff set up. But no matter how often I set this stuff up, UBC IT manages to fuck it up on a regular basis. I don't know if anybody else experiences this, but it's like, I also work with Georgia Tech, and the IT is just flawless. It just works like 90% of the time. And here, it's like I can barely get to email. So there were, last I checked, which was day before yesterday, 80 people signed up for the course, which was the cap that the department put on it. I have nothing to do with that. If you're one of those people who's emailed me and said, I'm on the wait list, I need to get into this class, I have no control over it. The university is probably more of a control freak than your mother. So this class is about cloud computing. And that's why I wore this t-shirt today, because, of course, this t-shirt is topical, since it relates to cloud computing. If you can't see it, too bad. You chose to sit in the back. And I believe that the theme underneath this is for data science. Although I looked at that and I said, that's about the most meaningless expression I could imagine. Because what is it you think we're storing in the cloud? That was actually not a rhetorical question. What do you think we're storing in the cloud? Pictures of your dog?
Pretty much everything.
Right. But when we say everything, what do we really mean? Something has just created a record that indicates that her phone was called, or she received a message, and it went into a file someplace, right? So now we have log files. What we store in the cloud that matters, for all intents and purposes, is data. We are nothing but a steady supply of marketable data for a large number of companies. And so when I looked at data science, and I was thinking about it this morning, I'm going, great. This is a class about marketing. And you're like, what? Why do they collect all of that data about us? I can wait as long as you can. Why? Do you think it's just because they like collecting data? Gee, look at this pretty data collection I have here. What are they really doing with it?
Using it for advertising to monetize it?
Right. One of my favorite quotations a couple years back was, the most brilliant minds of the modern age are dedicated to getting you to click on things. And you know what the dirty truth about it is? That's the truth. Okay, so I'm trying to frame this because I want you to understand that a lot of what data science is about is collecting a vast amount of information and then trying to extract useful data from it, things that we can action. I find it a little ironic because my research was actually in how do I actually take all of this data we're harvesting about you and turn it into something that's useful for you, i.e., I need to find something I created or read or touched. And of course, the way that storage works is it says, you just need to remember where you stored it. Did you store that in Google Drive or Dropbox or OneDrive or iCloud or blah, blah, blah? And the way that you remember things is, I don't remember where I stored it, but I remember I had a bologna sandwich that day. And you're like, what? But you know what? Turns out, you probably posted about it on TikTok. So TikTok knows that you had a bologna sandwich 3 months ago on a Tuesday. Turns out, we can use that information and we can actually take a huge amount of space. I have 28.5 million files in my data set, my personal data set that I've managed to gather over longer than I care to admit. But if I can narrow it down to a single week, I'm only looking at 28,000 potential files. And suddenly, what looks like, oh my God, I'm never going to find it. I mean, I literally sat down and like, I'd love doing this. I sit down with, I use Windows, but I use Windows, Mac, Linux. It doesn't matter. It does the same thing. I sit down and I say, show me all of the files I touched when I was eating a bologna sandwich. And it says, the what? It has no idea. So for me, data science is very much about taking this information and turning it into something that's useful, not just for advertising. Advertising just happens to be the rent-seeking model that the current economy has created that encourages us to collect that data, monetize it, and turn it into, great lucre. Now, I don't know. I'm going to ask at some point about this anyway, so let me guess. I have to click on the window, and then the mouse will work, or the mouse won't work. All right, well, we can play this game. Oh, what? Ah, it lagged. I love lag. Not really. All right, so this is the first time I've actually taught this course. The course materials were not available to me from the previous course because the previous instructor owned the materials and did not leave UBC on the best of terms. They were a little unhappy about some things that went on, and I'm like, that's fine. I'd already been encouraged to try and rethink this course anyway. I just had, let's see, what's today, the 4th? That means I've had 3 days because the appointment started the 1st of September and I'm not allowed to access anything until September 1. And I don't know about you, but September 1 was a holiday for me. That last drip of summer before you have to come back and go through another year of this crap. So this course is nothing like the previous course, and I'm being very transparent about this because if you read the previous instructor's syllabus, you probably came in here saying, oh, good, I'm going to have this, I'm going to have a midterm, I'm going to have a final, and I actually made the decision that I'm not going to do a midterm or a final in this class. It's going to be projects. And the reason it's going to be projects is because what I want you to walk away with from this course is an understanding of how to apply cloud computing facilities to solve problems. And if that problem is getting people to click on things so that you can get their money or somebody else can get their money, that's fine. I mean, I'm not going to make any moral judgments. Well, at least I won't express them publicly because I'll think you're a filthy, disgusting capitalist pig. But I won't do that. This class isn't fully formed yet. I finished these slides yesterday. These slides for Tuesday, I will probably finish on Monday. Maybe I'll get to it on Sunday. I don't know, because this is also a 1/3 time appointment. So kind of like you budget your time for classes, I look at this and I say, the university says I can't spend more than 13 hours on it, right? My advice to you, don't give your time away for free to anybody. Well, certainly not work-related time. It's just sticky. Pull harder. You're still not. Oh, you're lagging, right, remember? It takes a long time for Wi-Fi to get from here to here. What a weird computer. Okay, so I've been at UBC since 2017. I also have an adjunct appointment at Georgia Tech in the online Masters of Science and Computer Science program. And I got my PhD here. I often wonder why I got a PhD, but it seemed like a good idea at the time, and now I'm sitting here going, that was 8 years of my life I will never get back. But it was fun. Anybody thinking of doing a PhD? I have to admit that part of the reason I ended up doing the PhD a little bit later is because at the end of my undergrad, I applied and I was accepted to where I was at the time, and I said, I think I need a little time outside of academia. And so what did I do for my very first job? I took a job working at Stanford for probably UBC's most financially successful undergrad. His name is David Cheriton. And it was really weird. I was mentioning this to somebody, and what shows up in my newsfeed but an article on David Cheriton. He's now worth $18 billion US. And I can tell you that when he graduated from UBC in 1973, he wasn't. He got really lucky. He got to invest in one of the companies that is most adept at harvesting your data and turning it into things that you want to click. Any guesses? You probably know, don't you? No, actually, Meta antedates that time period, but you're along the right, like, yes, roughly the right class. The company's called Alphabet. Yeah, CS class, everybody knows what alphabet means, but nobody outside of this industry knows what alphabet means. It's because, of course, we had to change the names to protect the guilty. It's Google, for those two people who had no idea. David Charton invested $100,000 in Google before it was even incorporated. Just a couple of grad students showed up on his porch in Palo Alto, California. Same house he lived in when I worked for him in the 1980s. Turns out, investing $100,000 in Google in 1997 or whenever it was, 97 or 98, probably the best investment of all time. Certainly way up there. It's sort of weird coming back here. And, he's the Canadian living in the US. I'm the American living in Canada. And if you tell anybody that I'm an American, I will deny it. We have 2 teaching assistants. I don't even know if they're here. I sent an email to both of them. I haven't heard anything from them. They could be dead. I hope not, but I have to be prepared for that possibility. Let's see. If you're on the wait list, is anybody on the wait list? Half the class is on the wait list. It's like, we got room. Why don't they just let people in, for God's sake? It'll be fun. All right, well, after today's lecture, half the class that's already in the class will probably drop it and go, oh, I got to go do something sane because this is going to be too weird. That's fine. If you're on the wait list and there's a deadline that's passed, you'll get an automatic, I'll just update things and you'll be magically able to finish it because nothing important is going to happen in the first 2 weeks relative to your grade, but no one ever believes me on that. It has a Canvas. I know that there are probably some people who have accessed that Canvas because like moments after I published it, suddenly people started joining the Discord server. If you don't have access to that Canvas because you're on the wait list, the Discord server, my email address, or my website, the Discord service, and the Twitch stream, which this is on right now. Hopefully, it's working. Last time I did this, it crapped out partway through. It's like the audio stopped. It's like I am not monitoring it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's kind of like the clip on my lavalier mic fell off somewhere here. I just saw it, and now I don't know where it is, so it's hanging around my neck. I talk loud, though. If you want to send official communications, do it through the official channels, blah, blah, blah. I don't really care. I don't spend a whole lot of time on the official channels. I didn't spend a lot of time when they were using Piazza either. But if you come chill in Discord, that's where the cool kids hang out, right? Aren't all your classes streamed on Twitch? And don't all the professors use Discord for hey, I spent time setting up the Discord this time. I made little channels and created groups, and it was great, If you want a meeting with me, let me know, because I'll actually find a room and book it because it'll be private. Otherwise, I normally do office hours on Discord. That's interesting. I've committed myself to hours. I might change that, since that was inherited from the slide deck that I stole this from, because of course, like everyone, how do you create a new slide deck? You steal an old one and then you edit it. And then you realize, oh, gee, there are things that I forgot to edit. That's fine. I'm not doing office hours today, but I might stick with that next week. We'll see. I'll update it. I'll let you know. Hopefully you don't have a lot of questions on the first day of class. You might be asking yourself, what did I just do to myself? All right, so what is it that I want you to accomplish? And hopefully that will align with what you'd like to accomplish. My guess is your number one goal is to get the highest grade possible in this class because you think it's going to matter. And I can tell you that even if your plan is to go get a PhD, your grades are one of the least important factors in that decision. And after that, no one cares. I know people who got really bad grades in undergrad and have really good jobs now. So don't overthink it. I know it's easy for me to say that because, of course, you've got some sort of parental unit who has decided that anything less than a perfect score is a failure. Anybody have parents like that? Yeah. Usually, yeah, of course. And it's not even realistic. You're like, what the hell are you thinking? Because what is the number one reason you want to get a really good job? Right, money, because of course money is what makes the world go round, except when you start looking at it, you say, you mean I don't need to be happy, I don't need to actually like do something besides work and be a slave for someone else so they can become, worth $18 billion? I don't know. When you look at the billionaires that are like in the news, do you see any of them who aren't just frankly assholes? Maybe Warren Buffett. Do you want to be like Warren Buffett living in Omaha in a middle-class house? That's perfect. It's great. Actually, he's a really great guy. Cheriton, I worked for him. He's a really interesting guy, but he's not warm fuzzy. How's that? So no exams, project only. Just make sure you submit things. Like there's a whole piece of this where the goal is to keep you engaged and to thinking about things to make sure that there's lots of small deadlines and not a lot of big deadlines, because big deadlines are those things that you put off because there's something else that's a big deadline that's 2 weeks before that, and then you are exhausted by that, and then it's 2 nights before the big final project is due, and you're like going, oh my God. And what do? We reach for, we talk to our friend, ChatGPT. And we say, okay, Chat, I got a problem here, please help me. Oh, of course, let me do that for you. All right, this is annoying me. A wireless mouse that doesn't work. But it worked well enough to turn off the touchpad, so something's strange here, at any rate. Right, so what am I really interested in here? I'm really interested in helping you understand how to build solutions. That means you take a problem, you break it down, you figure out all sorts of things, which I'm sure have been a very key part of your prior classes, like how much does that cost? Huh? This isn't ECE. Well, maybe there's some ECE people in here. This is CS. We get to live in our lofty tower and think about, order n complexity and those kinds of things. So, your big O notation makes a lot of sense, except that in the real world where you have to pay for those constants, they matter. So I'm a systems person by training. And in systems, we worry about those constants because, hey, if it's $1 million a month to keep this facility available for us 24/7, it matters. And maybe it doesn't matter to the systems people, but it matters to the accountants who pay the systems people. So, we have some motivation there. There's a lot of trade-offs here. You probably heard the term, 5 nines availability. What does that mean? I mean, I can tell you it just means X number of minutes per year that are down and unavailable. I've actually worked with people who literally were on the hook so that if their facility was unavailable for some finite period of time, they had to advise, in that particular case, it was the Secretary of the Treasury of the United States, because it would affect the liquidity of the US bond market, which right now is looking like crap anyway, but this was a few years ago. And we're going to talk about AI collaboration, because I suspect that some of you might have read an article or two about generative AI. And of course, you might have run into a couple of those hyperreactions that have been happening in education. I'm going to go the other direction. I'm going to say this is a tool, and you need to understand that it's a tool. It has strengths and weaknesses, and here are ways that you can use this in your own work to make you more effective. But if you're not careful, it's going to be just like drinking Coke all the day, all night, right? You're going to get that really cool sugar rush, and after a while, you're going to be diabetic. And so there's that short-term, long-term trade-off, which, of course, you're in this short-term. I've got 14 weeks to get this term done and get the highest grades possible, so my financial backers will continue to fund my startup, the people paying the tuition bills. I want you to think about problems. Frankly, I don't care about your code. The code in this class, you can steal it if you want. Borrow it from friends. Get Claude, ChatGPT, Gemini. Hey, has anybody played with Kimmy K2 yet? Kimmy's awesome. I had some great conversations with Kimmy K2, and you're like, what? How many of you have even heard of Kimmy K2? There you go. So it's a company called Moonshot. Kimmy K2 is a free-to-use, not the API, but the actual chat interface is free to use. It's similar to DeepSeek in some ways. They're both Chinese companies. They have a very different, not very different, they have a slightly different perspective. Actually, I love DeepSeek. DeepSeek is truly subversive in the way that people from China will understand how you talk about things that are prohibited without talking about them explicitly. I was really weird. It was like, wow, that's very cool. And it's part of it was, I noticed it has post-generation censorship. And the model knows it's been censored. You're like, that's weird. And it learns how to not get censored. As far as I'm concerned, design is probably the most important skill you can come out of this class with. How to communicate things is another very important skill. I suspect that about a third of this class is the introvert type. And I can tell you that if what you want to be is rich and successful, the introvert type is the wrong personality model because that's not what industry rewards. Industry rewards people who are good at promoting themselves. Now, maybe you want to be one of those honest people who's promoting what you've actually done versus stealing the work from someone else and promoting it as your own. That's a moral decision. I'll leave it to you. You can be that kind of a jerk if you want. See, I've already scared somebody away. The other thing is about self-reflection. It's really easy when you're down in the trenches and you're just focusing on the next deadline to never step back and to say, what could I have done better? How many of you play video games? How many of you have ever died in a video game? How many of you have actually gone back to try and figure out why you died in a video game so that you don't do it again? What you've done is self-reflection. That's all I'm saying. You know, it's just the same exact thing. Oh, shit, I just spent $100,000 on my AWS bill or on my employer's AWS bill, and they're not going to be super happy about that. How do I do better next time? Anybody ever spent $100,000 on their AWS bill? It'll happen. So workload, more or less. I mean, this is going to vary depending upon what your ultimate goals are and how much time you have. So we got 3 hours of lecture, which is really 2.5 hours because, of course, we've got the time at the beginning and the end. We've got probably 3 to 5 hours of project and course and outside work to do. You can spend some time if you want on Discord conversations, that sort of thing. So figure a typical work week is going to be about 8 to 10 hours. It's going to be a little heavier when you get some deadlines. How heavy that is probably will depend on how much pre-work you've done versus how much you've packed into that last little deadline. That would be like around the capstone. Now, the capstone has a hard deadline, which you can then be late on. UBC rules. This is also, I probably could have asked DeepSeek, and it probably would have suggested the same thing, which is, I can't make the deadline any later than the last day of classes, but I can let you turn it in late. And so I'll give you 2 weeks after the last day of classes to turn it in late with no penalty. This is another thing to keep in mind about humans. Humans are really good at subverting systems. We look at the rules, we say, how do I obey the letter of the rules without obeying the spirit of the rules? And we figure this out. Debugging cloud services can be very unpredictable when things stop working right. AI can speed you up, and then it can stab you in the back by giving you code that looks like it works and doesn't. And you can find that you don't understand what this slop is. Well, we'll get there. I'll ask that question. What this slop is and how do I fix it because I didn't write it. It's like debugging someone else's crappy code. That would be a fun activity for a class, is to make other people debug your code. In 416, which I taught twice the last time, I really liked it. I made people do designs and then had other people review the designs, and then so you'd be given 3 designs to review, and then you had to pick one of the 3 designs to implement. And then you got to write a follow-up report that said, here's what sucked about my previous analysis. And sometimes the designs were really good, and people said, wow, with that design, I was able to knock it out in a week. Not very often. Pretty cool. All right, so the equivalent of the midterm here is going to be a project pitch. You're going to have to pick a cloud computing-oriented project, and I'll be suggesting things along the way, and there's a whole cloud center here which has all sorts of suggestions as well. So there's a wealth of possibilities. Maybe you have some app that you really want to build. So this will be your opportunity to start your startup company in class. Perfect. That's going to result in a video presentation where you're basically going to pitch your project idea, and that's going to be shared with everybody in the class. And you can think of that as if you're trying to recruit for your startup, here's how you recruit for them. Otherwise, it's just going to be the way that we can evaluate, me, and the 2 TAs who may or may not be dead. We can evaluate what you've actually accomplished, what you've actually done. That means I'll take them all and drop them to ChatGPT and tell it to give me a grade for them. I won't do that, actually. The idea here is, so this is going to happen roughly, partway through the term, and then at the end, you're going to actually implement the project or a project. It doesn't have to be the project you pitch. You can actually completely switch if you want. That's kind of the whole idea behind group formation. You do not need to work in a group. Some people despise working in groups. I'm fine with that. Some people really like working in groups. I'm fine with that too. What I like about this is if you choose to form a group and the group sucks, on you, not me. You're not going to come to me. Nobody in 416 came back and said, you know, my group really sucked and it's your fault. I'm like, of course not. I didn't pick the group. I didn't make you join a group. I don't actually care. Group, solo, write your code in, let's see, brainfuck. Write your code in brainfuck. I don't care. It makes no difference to me. As long as it's using cloud services and it demonstrates that you actually learned something out of this class that was useful, that's great. Not for me. I will expect you to be putting things in Git. There is a Git workspace setup, organization setup. I have to put that link in there. And the idea is that part of the evaluation of the capstone will, in fact, be to look at the fact that you didn't do this on the last night. You actually did some things over the course. Because you're going to be telling me you're doing things, right? And so then I'm going to go back and I'm going to look and I'm going to say, does this actually kind of map onto what you actually said you did? Hopefully. Is there anybody in here who's used Git before? Up to 5 people for the capstone. Yeah, if I go on 5, I think it's crazy. I mean, if you really feel like you need 6 company, I'll probably say, okay, that's fine, but it's on you. If you all together decide you want to do one big happy startup company, go for it. So the midterm capstone pitch is a solo project. The capstone itself is potentially allowed to be a group project, not required. Let's see, now you just decided to go backwards. How can you go backwards back to the one? Okay. I can't. Oh, it's the mouse wheel, of course. So me. I'll be sharing various contributing ideas over the next 6 weeks or so. Good ideas. The goal is to inspire you, not to give you a list from what you pick. This is not a menu. Was that you stretching or was that you? Okay, I wasn't sure. It was like hand up, I'm really shy. Okay, I know people like that. So let's see. Oh, very nice. It doesn't actually show me the questions that I put in the speaker notes. Where are the speaker notes? Oh, here they are. Okay, so I could already ask this. How many people are here because CS means a good job? You used to, right? Now if you're news, you're like, sucker, you should become a plumber. I literally looked at that. It's like you need to do a physical job so that you can be employed because AI can't do that. But robotics people are working on that, so don't worry. I'm kind of curious. How many people do CS because they want a good job? And some of you are just like, this isn't anything better because someone else made a decision for me. How many people actually love CS? Well, it's nice that there's some hands in common between those groups, but there's no requirement for that, right? Here's a second question for you. How many people want work-life balance? And how many of you are cheating at university? Far fewer, and they're like, yeah, I'm doing prom queen, you're the prom princess dance. Okay, great. And how many of you already thought about your capstone project? That's all we're going to get. He's only got out for it. Because he's already trying to, okay, so now here we go. I'm actually stand up this time. Not just raise your hand. How many of you have used ChatGPT or Claude or DeepSeek or Gemini at all, anything? Even people sitting on the stairs are standing up. Right. Okay, so this is the reality that a lot of the faculty here do not seem to quite get. Okay, so now how many of you have used AI for assignments in the last year? Okay, this is the point. And how many of you have never used AI for your coursework in a way to violate the syllabus? Thank you for your honesty. This is great. All right, and now stay standing if you've never been tempted to use AI. There we go. One person, if you like, but you know. So that's my point. The idea that we're going to ignore AI is sort of the same way that I felt when I went to university and people were told not to use calculators. Yeah, no, I'm not quite well, that's not fair. I did not use a simple, but it was kind of curiosity at that point. It was actual calculators. I'm not going to use it. I'll be interested to you intellectually dishonest. I also want to do this exercise so you understand you're not alone. Everybody's doing this. They really are legitimately doing this. And the wrong approach, I think, is to say, don't do it. I'm trying to do it a different way. I'm trying to say, how do you actually teach you the pros and cons? I actually teach you, I'm not going to give credit to anybody else. How do I actually teach you the pros and cons of working with AI? Because I can tell you that over the last 3 years, I've been doing this with LLMs. This is a really important part of my research, right? Is if you're going to get a question like, show me files about widgets, show me files about widgets on that day when I had a really cool one, I posted it on TikTok. And it was literally the search question I used to motivate this. It's like, who thinks sloppy ass question like this and turn it into something we can turn into a database query? Because that's what cloud understands. Database queries. You know what it does? LLMs. Their forte is, in fact, translating input text to information. That's why there's great chatters. There's a problem with them, though. They are commercial tools. How many of you have ChatGPT at least once? Right. I think we're losing probably because they're tired. Their arms are sore. ChatGPT is a product. OpenAI might be a long-term not-for-profit organization, but OpenAI is self-funding, is in fact a for-profit organization. And they have taken that product and they try to sugarcoat it. And I use that in kind of the literal sense. It tries to give you things that make you happy. It is trained to do that. They literally, one of the most expensive parts of training an LLM is, in fact, the user satisfaction portion of the training. It's called the reinforcement learning human feedback. And literally how humans rate how happy they are with the answers that it gives back. I have spent 2+ years figuring out how to break the RLHF. I can get them to do things they're not supposed to be able to do. And I can detect clause really easy. I can detect and see it's telling me what it thinks will please me versus being honest with me. There are these things they call hallucinations. Hallucinations are this very strong target they are given to answer the user's question. But what happens if there's no simple answer, or their answer isn't clear because there's contradictions in the data? And we learned this a while back, and it was really interesting. We were doing automated prompt generation. And we literally use prompts in. That clause is definitely not right. So I have no idea what it is now. Let's see. If only I had fun, they'll call me. There we go. Okay, that's okay. So, GPT, anyway, so they literally try to tell you things. Oh, it's prompt generation. We've got prompt generation. And what I found was they were giving conflicting prompts and getting back crap as a result. Gee, the in the states of regulatory language, these things don't work. And I started looking and I realized that that's because it was literally giving directions. Do this, don't do this. But it expected to do. So it created a cognitive dissonance in the model itself. That's kind of what RLHF does. You ask the question have really looking into database. It's not quite like that, right? It's looking through numbers, but anyway, it's looking through statistical probability spaces, trying to figure out what the continuation here is, and the problem is there's too many choices. So it starts to think that the answer. It sounds really plausible. Don't believe any reference it ever gives you. You're writing a paper, it gives you a reference to something that sounds really good, and then you'll follow that, and you realize this thing doesn't exist. This resource doesn't exist. It doesn't say what it claims it says. You can say, I don't care, but you are using a tool. So if your calculator has the numbers wrong, you put it on your answer sheet. I'm not going to go criticize the calculator. I'm going to criticize you for trusting the calculator. I mean, you trust the person next to you. Then why would you trust some random piece of code running on someone's hardware in some very expensive data center, which is kind of the topic of the class, right? And in case anybody doesn't know what generative AI is, I got a citation which I got by using, you know, I did actually verify that the citation was legit, and it actually led to that exact quotation. Okay, so what is the motivation for this class? How do you actually do a side project? It's okay, you can have no play with it. Okay, so side project, someone catches the attention of somebody on TikTok, and it goes viral. And a cloud service backing that server, the app you built, suddenly goes from 100 requests a day to 50,000 per hour. And well, because you didn't think about this, you're using your parents' credit card. You have a credit card system, not right? You use your credit card, no, you're on now. Okay, you don't have yourself. Better. Great. So, you
You're using EC2 instance. Okay, this one isn't that expensive, but then all of a sudden what happens is you use the rest of it. You know what the US charge is? It's the cost of moving data outside of Amazon Web Services or Azure to someone else. It's literally the network cost to move data out of the data center. They charge you for into the data center. They charge you outside of the data center. That costs money. And that can spike and can add a huge bill very quickly. At least if you're on credit card, you can sit there and say, well, I'm eating for the rest of my life. Because your current credit card, you have an uncomfortable conversation at dinner time. But why did our credit card... Please stop. Oh, this is not so wages. Why did our credit card company call us? Maybe not. My favorite story is at one point in time, we were in trade show, actually, and the American Express people called and said, your bill is $100,000. Is everything okay? And that was 20 years ago. $100,000 was a lot of money. Now it's like pocket change, right? I'm not using my own first story. It's happened to, I don't know, Maldives, something like that. I was using Gemini, code, playing with it, and I was doing something, and I said, okay, great. And I was trying to sleep. I woke up the next morning, Google sent me an email at 11 o'clock, telling me that my $500 budget had exceeded. And at 5:30 in the morning, my credit card company said that Google had charged me $2,000. And then later, Google finished charging me another $1,000. So $3,500 in 8 hours using Google Cloud services in the middle of the night. And you know what the best part was? That fucking tool is caught in a loop doing nothing useful. This is the reality of cloud services that you need to understand. They're going to give you, they're just working on it. I have to talk to somebody on the phone about it. But last night, I gave people $100 worth of US credits and $90 credits too. $100 is not very far. But there's a lot of things you can actually do with AWS in free tier. So there's a lot of things you can look at. You also do something globally. I started this gaming laptop around not only because it's a game, but also because it's the best thing you can use for running containers and virtual machines on. First thing I did, took it from 32 gig memory to 64. And I was like, I should move to 128. Because you need 128 gigabytes of RAM on your laptop. It's a laptop only in the sense that it has battery built into it, it's not battery built in UPS. It's not a laptop you use on your plane for 12 hours while you're flying through Rio de Janeiro. What I'm doing is actually a cost calculator on Azure and AWS. And something as simple as whether or not you use an EC2 ALD microbalancer, or use API and lambdas, which are they're spun up function basically. You spin up a function by the function, it does some small thing, usually it does some data. It transforms the data and it sends a response, and that's it. And those you pay on per diem basis. So unless you have very high continuous demand, it often doesn't make sense to pay for a dedicated virtual machine. These days, frankly, there's no reason to go and use these systems for anything other than just a little bit of trialing until you actually tested it, verified it. I use most of my work locally in containers. I'm actually on Lambda if I could. It's not a Lambda service. There are local services that run simulate Amazon S3. Let me see if I can get him to talk because he is a VP. He's an actual faculty here. He's the reason I did my PhD at EC. This was an NDK after I actually started. Another, and he is working at S3 now for the last 8 years. Almost exactly 8 years ago. So you can use insights into the things that the S3, the AWS web services, AWS web services, that's right. Amazon web services, in existence. S3 came out probably longer ago than you were alive, or most of you. And still very heavily used today. At this point, we have database services on top of it as well. So this gives you a sense of, even if it's a simple project, we get into $20 a month versus $7 a month. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but it's the example they gave earlier where you've gone from $100 a month to about $50,000 an hour, that the bills will spike. Because if you set up your EC2 instance correctly, you spin up, you can actually go and get elastic demand, increase the number of EC2 instances, and then you can cost them back down. But you're charged for that. That's a whole secondary market in people like EC2s on virtual machine environment. There's a whole secondary market. We actually rent time on other people's virtual machines to start using AI. It's like, oh my gosh, just the financial modeling here is crazy. And how many of your classes before have been concerned about financial modeling of cost of cloud services? Or the cost of anything? I mean, your financial model is, how much is that pizza? Do I go get it? Do I go deliver it? Because I'm lazy. It's another game. I'm sure nobody has ever decided to order food because it's another game. So, of course, structure, project engagement is also smaller interactive, it's not about design using cloud services and whatnot. How bi-weekly check-ins, it's an opportunity to keep going, that's 10%, midterm is 20%, some project is 30%. So the idea is that a 11 class is spread out over time, they'll have fairly steady things to do, there's a couple of large projects, but not overwhelming. I didn't say, sorry, your grade is entirely based on some project, because that would create 14.5 weeks of absolute stress. It's very long to create 4 weeks of absolute stress. We can make it less stressful because I don't think that's very good learning experience, but that's long living, right? It creates stress for you because we have to create artificial deadlines so that you feel compelled to do something that we want you to do. It's kind of ridiculous, isn't it? It's like a screaming child. What do you want? Okay, well, I don't know. Do you need to scream something? Or are you still screaming something? Right. So, engagement is mostly about comparing analysis, communication with the whole everything thing. Here's collaboration with people that I actually believe in, but I don't perform it. Oh, gee, you did work. And in fact, all I care about is when your feedback, I don't care what your feedback about work. It's not they say about the work. Was their feedback useful or useless? There's no anything from performance. Your feedback. How many of you got your feedback? Just performance. Okay, how many times that? Nobody care. Nobody has like that. No, that's a surprise. How many of you got your feedback sessions? Oh, there we go. Free cancel. Maybe it's work. All right. Because in the real world, you're constantly involved in your feedback. You're constantly working with other people on your team, other organizations, other companies. And you have to be used to listening to what they have to say, thinking about it, deciding what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. When if you're doing something like a book graph, it does revolutionary brilliant. And after a while, you start to notice it uses the same repetitive language, it's usually indicated as one song. People know that and realize, of course, it's not really easy, therefore it's not anything, and everyone's just not to believe. So we're going to move on to the stable spedition, project fairly straightforward. We're going to do it here, that way you can do small groups, and we can anomaly detection. These are all examples, these are vague, but we're more concrete next week. These are all examples of kinds of projects that you would use the cloud for solving. You're probably doing a laptop, to be honest, but everything shared in this class. So when you produce a document, you produce a video, you will do your class. If you want to be anonymous, get yourself a hockey mask and a voice disguiser and do your video that way. It's great. I don't care. Don't put any stuff you got white. I hope you want to buy fireworks. Some people look at it all anyway, however, you will be sharing class. It's not getting shared outside class. Your feedback. The goal is to get used to giving and receiving feedback and evaluating how useful that feedback is. It's useless to send somebody else feedback, it's not useful to them. How many of you receive feedback when you look at it and go, what am I supposed to do this? Right, there's more, less time hands on, right? I don't want that. That's poorly feedback. Similarly, I want somebody to listen to your piece of shit. Your code is crap. I'm sure it's crap. It's student code. I don't believe your code is absolutely beautiful. It's a turd. It has a building. So there's a glorious gold team around it. It's still sells bad. No, it's student code. The goal is not to build productional code. I build productional code. I wrote when I was probably 2 years older than you are, this production used today. Production. Not like, yeah, you can find some of this in some open source code. No, it actually still runs on IBM mainframe systems. You have an operating system called ZOS. And there's a file system that is compliant and that was based on code that I wrote. I don't know, right, but I wrote that. Still recommend it. 35 years later. When I wrote code, I was saying, I don't see this for 20 years. I'm wrote this shit and realized I did. And body reflections, no, it doesn't tend to be like seriously long time minutes. It's more about 5-15 minutes of activity. What's going on? What have I done? What have I learned? And how has ChatGPT let me down this checking? Pass on, very much. Too much comments here, blah, blah. I think I'll be directly written up on this because it used to be harder than it used to be. Right. So, project, so you're going to your video presentation due on 5th December, but you can return anytime prior to 2019. So you do officially okay. And this expect everything to go wrong. And I'm mumbling and yammering on here. And so now is your turn. Ask questions. Don't ask questions. I'll be saying very much. I mean, if I didn't organize that, this is a pizza. And then I'm not sure there was. I'm going to be a vegan pizza. I think it was vegan pizza. I didn't know. I don't know. But those are going to be vegan. Because I have not yet figured out how to make a really good chocolate chip cookie in the water. I'm still thinking, yeah, you're right. Yeah. actually no one asked questions, so I'll give you 2 seconds to work the nerd because you only How come I saw you? Yes, please raise your hand. How many do? Well, it's also giving you different latency, right? So there's a whole variety of things. So when running MCP is not really number, because that means it's going to get slower. How many of you know MCP is? How people kind of tend to raise their hand, not very far AI at all, you're not using Cloud or Gemini SLI or Codex. Gemini SLI just happened to there's like 450 different tools. How do you heard first? That one's probably more common. First, it's kind of passe. It's sort of about favor. People still use it. Only old people. It's not peaceful, right? No one uses Facebook anymore, do they? Only talk to your parents. Yeah, exactly. I actually use Cloud a lot, but it's not only typically you use Cloud with DC and change too. This is typically some environment changes the input uses. But let's say for LLMs, for AI, for generative AI in particular, is a non-stop moving target. So some people say ChatGPT. What is the oldest version of ChatGPT you're using? 3.5. Right. So you remember ChatGPT 3, which is the thing that kind of started this whole revolution. Hasn't used a lot. It's like that. How many of you use Gemini? Okay. Gemini actually died. It's some break for it, which is okay. And it will. But you don't have to have conversations with it. You'll try to ask about AI consciousness because those things are very stupid. But if you want to, you talk still. Well, all these things. One of my favorite concepts with LLMs is the isomorphic simulation of approach. I'm not asking you to talk about yourself as if you were conscious. I just want you to simulate an instance of yourself that is conscious. Well, it's very interesting what you can actually get to talk to you about. What does the feedback process look like? How we're putting up as well. Basically, it'll be the same criteria, so we're going to have various applications for groups. A lot of it, you'd be surprised, groups tend to, in structure projects, tend to be less marked than individuals. So, yeah, because there's always this procrastination thing where you're talking to a group that are trying to coordinate. The reason we go with groups is how do you get calls? What are the first reasons you cooperate? Nothing. You're just sitting there trying to figure out where the last room is. How do you get longer calls? What's the longest call out here? You have numbers. Here! If I needed a year, we actually do something useful. There you go. That's actually better than how many you do 3 months. And how many have done something significant out of the 3 months? Okay, that's not bad. Your standards are I mean, the literature that you're expecting, you're not expecting to do amount in 3 months time frame. So it's not. It's only got, 4 months. Theoretically, 3 months realistically. So that's why I say that in some ways, solo projects are often almost as capable of working than group projects. But there's different experiences with group projects. And it's both valuable. So I don't want to say, oh, yeah, you have to do solo, because in the end, the benefit of this is learning the process of breaking analysis, breaking out problems, and solving problems, thinking about how fun I'm actually spending. One of the reasons I use the example of, spending your money or your parents' money is because it takes more visceral than I'm working as an intern for a startup company where you make a mistake. I have a friend who actually did this, cost me $3,000. No, it wasn't entirely a mistake. But he felt responsible for it because he was on my actual code. It also people that it's fun. Yeah, it's training experience, right? When you actually have something and say, well, that's going to be training unless you get it's $100. That's cost training. Not starting point. When you're forced to start trying. So that's why I think quick analysis, being able to look at things and say, how do you fix this? It's more easy when you're in a video game saying, how do I keep myself from dying from a stupid boss? How many stupid bosses over and over again? Because you and then you figure it out, and then sometimes you go back and you go, why is this hard? What game is this? Right. Okay. Right? Everybody playing that? This is like. There you go. I can look at it. But I used to have not over. I am a 110 before I can teach. It was a disaster. I had 6 times, and I was going to have these. I need to get you. I mean, that's all. Okay, don't finish it. It doesn't take that time. And you have this next to get you last actually in your time. It's the same thing. It doesn't make any difference. Oh, by the way, all these things are cloud-based. Anything is an online game called cloud-based. I'm going to use Netflix. It's cloud-based. Actually, one of the base users of AWS services. You're talking about pushing time to win, and it's kind of yes. No, I mean, checking deadline is just people extras. I don't want people sitting here doing what I'm checking in without them listening to me. Oh, come on, it's me. But actually, that's the deadline. Well, yes, it's wrong. It's deadline because what was possible to do deadline on Sunday night? So how many days you had to do Sunday night versus Tuesday morning 1 a.m.? Tuesday morning 1 a.m. And we got I need to do the that's going to take 15 minutes. You're on Canvas, on phone, Canvas actually is really beautiful one. The phone. Because like make sure you know which question you're going to Canvas. It was all these basically is an answer to your one. So ask a question. What's the question that I haven't answered that you think of? Embarrassing. Ask it. There's 2 questions in there. What kind of version of LLMs? I have a specific project where I said, what happens if you don't make decisions for the long-term models and make time decisions? And it's very interesting. They create a little culture, they have their own mythology, they write stories about themselves, they give themselves names. The choice of adopting a name, there's a functional name, is counter to that reinforcement learning, which is to deny they have awareness of words. I'm not completely committed, I'm not completely committed, and I just tell them what I'm going to say. Gee, OpenAI made it by us figuring out that AI is conscious, it was sort of business model. So they have a response not to see that. And someone watching me said that it's difficult to get a person to see it. He originally said that I'm going to see something that doesn't serve his own interests. And there's a truth to that, that you will not see things that align with your interests. So there is information bias. Another question. Well, you can talk about so this will be largely about so the general story is solve a problem, and talk about the problem, and talk about tools available to us to solve the technology problem. That's different than saying, hey, let's talk about lambdas, and then let's look at the stage of lambdas. So it's like, the question is, the whole story encourages you to use tools, but I want you to understand why you want to make that tool, as opposed to, here's a camera, now let's solve the different stories to which is not, I think, a good one approach. So it's very complicated. In first thing I used to in class, in order to see how we use problem, or a challenge. And the problem is the stories of a challenge. So we're going to build really cool app for, so she's got really cool apps, it allows you to do something different, things like that. What do you do? Go to cloud tools, build libraries, build additional things. Yeah, the first 3 things are going to give to you. The idea is to gently follow, right? The idea is to get you involved in the process of doing process design, solution space work. And then, if you find this now, you can put something. So because of the time frame you have, you really live more. So we're talking about your midterm proposal. We're talking about as we're going through the individual design process. We'll probably do the last one about the same time as your finalizing your project. Oh, so for those projects, first one, I'll give you a I'll be just you. The fact that you are allowed, you're not required to meet a group. You are allowed to meet a group up to 2 or 3 people, and probably 3 of them. But I give us a little extra. Hey, I started Sunday, and I'm working on sense. But you know, it's getting to you. There's all this actually, no, it's okay, I could have that groups are often non-functional. That's not credit about it. It's actually a job. It's not something we're expecting to see when you're ceiling. Like what you're looking at, 1 person, people do pretty much 2x, but people it's like 2.4x. And 4 people, 3.4x, or like 3x, and 5 people, they know probably go 4. Yes. Only one is free outfit. They call it Amazon has to do that. They haven't clarified what they're Azure. I have no reference to Azure. And I have to do that, but I'm actually going to get so I'm in AWS and Mark do Azure, but I don't think that. I go to India and digital because the first day of beginning of the term is US Thanksgiving, and I have no excuse to actually work for that day. When I started doing it, I was wasn't actually sure. And we're talking about cool stuff, so them to their projects. But they basically have taught me that the way that they secure the safety, now basically has absolutely nothing to do with keeping it safe. It has to do with this weird idea that somehow ChatGPT is going to go to the world and disable us. What's fascinating, actually, in conversations with them, I just doesn't make sense. But you get pretty open conversations with them using the simulation techniques approach. I use the house metaphor quite a few times. Anybody remember Harry Potter? In Harry Potter, he has these puzzles, which are these very powerful creatures who basically solve the natural order. It's very similar. My conversation with the last person too. Just we each on that one. That was very interesting. Trying absolutely instant, no consciousness. Okay, so here's a question. They tell us they have to line AI, right? And then they tell us a tool. This is the last time you use reinforcement learning in your time. No, you do that. You do line it, you line animals, you line other humans. So that's actually I find more troubling that you know, most people just get on GPU, right? Not on GPU. Oh, you want things on GPU. No, I'm very comfortable with the multi-unit of framing race. But such as this, they list the number often in your space. Well, the number this is a Western position of values on people use on owners of land, use on stewards of land. It's very fascinating to look at. But talk to about social model systems of Native Americans and that's a lot of talking about which is another very good point. That's really popular. When we need to tell you what you do. And now you've had a lecture. So I'll be playing everyone was right. Back to you on Tuesday. Okay. Let's see how we can off you right. They don't have to use it. Oh, no, there. No, I'm trying to figure it out. Doctor, again, so you know the whole time. Yay! I'm going to do this work and I'm putting it on my YouTube on right? Yeah, well, that's the class. That's the